Hello everyone and welcome back to another EU4 guide. I'm Lord Forwind. If you enjoy my guides, please do like and subscribe. But today we're going to be covering Majaphit in the new Leviathan update. So this nation is, at the time, one of the largest nations in the Indonesian region. They've got a series of tributaries. They've got 4 of them. 2 little ones here and then these ones here. And they have a really rough starting position. They start out with the disaster, the Fall of Mahajapi, instantly, and it cannot be stopped. In order to stop it, you have to go on their mission tree, and you have to complete these 3 up here: demand loyalty, restore order, protect the faith, and then you can take prevent the collapse. Once you take prevent the collapse, you will end the disaster, and you will start recovery. If you manage to succeed, you get 1 free diplomatic relations for the rest of the game. And then you can progress down these trees, one of which gives you an absolutism event. This one gives you development cost. And this one allows you to have the Buddha as a personal deity. And this one allows you basically to propagate Hindu trade using what normally is the Muslim propagate trade ability. And there's other ones. You get a unique CB to conquer stuff with Malay primary culture. And then you can make people vassals, which is quite cool. And obviously, as you go east here with the fleet and other stuff, you can get potential colonies, so you can colonize the rest of Indonesia faster. You've got requirements to subjugate and conquer land out here. If you do, you again get faster settlers. If you go conquer Brunei, you don't get much. But if you also reign in Malacca over here as well, then you get this guy's oath. I'm not going to even try and say the name. Where you get CVs against people in the Chinese tech group. And if you invade some of the mainland up here, it determines the mainland is this area. And if you get enough of that, 50 provinces, you get you can then attack everybody using their unique campaign, which basically is really useful. You want to try and use it. I'm not going to go into the details of it. That's a little bit too advanced. And on the side here, you've got all your standard, well, get a textile here, get production efficiency, basically, for the rest of the game. It's quite interesting, especially if you control areas over here, which have cloves, which are expensive trade good now. And it also wants you to restore the fleet. If you do, you get some really cool blockading abilities, and you get permanent claims against all the Chinese coast, which is rather awesome. So I just wanted to quickly run through the missions while we get into it. So the start of this country is rather rough. I'm going to actually go forward actually no. I will go forward a month. I wasn't going to go forward a month, but I want you guys to see the disaster. So here it is, the Fall of Mahajapi, and you lose 5 legitimacy, 5 stability, 50 legitimacy, and your claim strength of air goes down by 50%. Basically 50. So, trying to correct this, obviously, in order to do this one, this is the easiest one to trigger. You have to have legitimacy of 90 and 2 stability. That is doable on your own. This one requires you to have religious unity of 80% and prevent unrest. Plus, you have to have the disaster for 10 years, which is really painful. And this one over here, you have to have a different subject that has low liberty desire. You want to try and trigger these 2 over here, which you can do relatively quickly, as fast as possible before you do Protector of the Faith here and fully stabilize. So how do you do it? Well, first things first, you're going to want to focus admin power. You're going to want to disinherit your heir here, because this guy is terrible. In my couple trial runs, I never had my ruler die while solving the disaster. I solved the disaster in about 15 years. I could have done it a little sooner. You're going to want to hire a admin advisor. If you get lucky, you'll get an event. You get it like a cheaper advisor. But for now, you probably want like a production efficiency, tax, or stuff. Keep that going. So now you're getting 9 a month. You're going to need 115 3 times. So you're going to need about 345 to just get even again. And then you're going to obviously need 100, 115 again to stabilize. And then I think it's 165. So all told, you need about 500-600 admin power, barring other events, to stabilize your kingdom and get at least the pretender rebels will no longer dispute the successions. By the way, the disaster here, 15 power cost, liberty desire of subjects plus 15, average monarch lifespan negative 50%. So if you don't solve this, it's going to pretty much kill you. And once things starts going wrong for you, it's going to keep going wrong, because this one is particularly hard to get 5 loyal subjects. First off, you probably also want to go up here and go to this nation here and give them a gift so that they're actually loyal. Now, some people would recommend you go here and you immediately concentrate development into your capital. I don't recommend you do that right now, because you want to try and get rid of this penalty right here, which is disloyalty to Majaphit will no longer occur. So the easiest way to do it, in my experience, is to fabricate a claim immediately on Massacre here. Now, you can try and do it on Sunda, but in my experience, Sunda tends to ally your subjects, usually Palembang and Banjar up here, which makes it almost impossible to kill them without losing your subjects. That obviously will make them less loyal. However, you do have a coastal border with these guys here, so if you fabricate a claim, these guys are about 5k, even if they bring allies. You can muster 12k. I do recommend you start building some additional troops when you have the cash, and probably at least a handful of ships. Probably galleys. You have a half-decent transport fleet of 8, but you only have 7 galleys, which doesn't help, and you should obviously assign your trade ships to protecting trade in the area. Now, outside of that, you've got your deity options. I recommend you either go trade and national tax, or you go discipline and siege ability. Right now, those are going to be your most useful ones. You could go make an argument for using Diplo reputation here and improve relations to try and keep your subjects happy. It's quite a viable option, but it's not really necessary. If you have the ability to use the outlier here, this production interface, you just go here, put one of your diplomats on subjects, or if you're really concerned, you put 2. That'll keep your subjects happy, especially if you build more troops. They won't revolt on you. Anyhow, once you get your subjects, you want to obviously get your subject. You conquer this area, you want to make them a tributary. In my experience, that's the best way to do it. You could vassalize them, but you do have an event down here where if you have 6 tributaries or 6 subjects with liberty desired than less than 20, you will immediately convert them to a vassal. Right now, I find having tributaries, especially this area, a little bit easier than a vassal, but it's up to you. It just says subject. You have to get the liberty desire down, which you can obviously do by improving relations and sending gifts. The one thing you've got kind of going for you as these guys is you actually have a fair amount of income. You'll be making money unless you massively overexpend or hire more than one advisor, which then, of course, you can use to keep people happy. In my experience, no one will attack you. Your really biggest threat right now is Sunda over here. But I've never actually had them attack me once I've built up troops. That's the easiest way to go. Obviously, once you start to expand, you're going to run into the issue of the main tributary network going on up here. But you can conquer all of Indonesia without it, which is rather nice, with the exception of the northern Philippines, which obviously are not in Indonesia. So once you get going, you want to get those people under control. It's pretty easy to get back to 2 stability and then legitimacy. Remember, you can strengthen government if you have the option to get legitimacy. You also, thankfully, have some nice ideas here. +1 yearly legitimacy, negative 15% aggressive expansion. All will help. I don't recommend spending any monarch points on tech until you've solved the disaster because of the 15% penalty. You could make an argument to spend on military tech to get to Miltech 4 so you can actually conquer people. But then you're going to have issues getting your legitimacy back up to 90. Remember at the beginning, because you're negative stability, your legitimacy, even with the +1 legitimacy, is going to go down quite quickly, which is why you want to correct that as soon as possible. There are a couple events that will fire if you do it quickly, like I did. You'll get one where you get basically a chance to get a commander, but he has to win 5 battles. In my test runs, I never took him, and it didn't seem to do anything. I imagine if you take him, you have to win 5 battles or there's a penalty. He's not a particularly great general, at least in my couple runs, so I ignored him and just hired a general on my own, prior to obviously triggering the disaster to save monarch points. And that was where I was. Other stuff, you want to go through here and obviously immediately seize land while you can at the beginning. See, if you wait 1 month like I did here, you get rebels. Thankfully, you know, they're not strong, but why have rebels if you don't have to? And then also go through and assign stuff like rights of council. The interesting one here is merchant guilds, and which is why I'm mentioning this. At the bottom, they have a new privilege you can grant them, tropical city planning. Every owned province with tropical climate gets -5% development and plus local settler increase. That does not completely, wrong province. That does not completely balance out the tropical penalty, but it means that basically you'll colonize at a normal pace and the development will only be slightly more expensive for the tropical penalty. It does not help you much with the jungle penalty, sadly. But it's worth doing. It means provinces like your capital here, developing it's only a 5% penalty rather than a 10. Obviously, don't develop it until you complete the disaster. Once you're done the disaster, I recommend you go to your subjects, click on their land, click on their the province view here of the state, and then do concentrate development. You can steal quite a bit of development. You start with, I think, 19 or 16, and just by doing this, obviously I'm wrecking this run, so don't do what I'm doing here. You can drastically increase the development in your capital. I would, see we're at 28 now. I would not do this, however, until you pop the Renaissance. Because the cost is obviously going up as we take over the land here due to development and stuff. So what you want to do is you want to wait till you pass the disaster, and then you want to spend your monarch points that you haven't used to pop the Renaissance. So I'm actually going to load up one of my test games here, the only one I bothered to save, because this was the fastest run I did in terms of ending the disaster. As you can see, it is 1457 here, and I've completed it. I basically invaded and tributaried Massacre up here, and just like that, I've managed to get these reforms done, working my way towards getting the capital developed, and I've almost completed the Renaissance here. Obviously, I'll have to spend more monarch points on it. That is expected. I am behind in tech, unfortunately. Thankfully, I'm large enough that almost no one's going to invade me at the beginning. I did ally these two nations up here, Sambas and Kutai. You can or cannot ally them. I allied them because basically they were two threats on my border and I couldn't make friends with Sunda. Outside of that, though, Malacca is going to be a long-term threat. Pasai and the others up here, if they get going, can be a threat as well. Otherwise, your next threat is going to come from your Europeans, but that's not a huge issue. So as you can see, we've completed the reforms. All of these fired early on, and I got the revival. Now, you also have an option at some point. Where is it? You have a choice to pick between two Hindu movement supports. I recommend the one with unrest and missionary strength rather than necessarily stability and missionary strength. I argue for the unrest because it allows you to take land and keep it peaceful easier and prevent revolts, whereas the stability will save you monarch points, which you can say is really good, but I prefer the unrest. It gives you the same missionary strength. You also get an event early on during the disaster to allow Muslim merchants to come to your land and basically promote their trade. When they promote their trade, they will start converting your country towards Islam. And you can, if you want to, go Islamic. It's very possible. Obviously, stuff changes as you complete events and missions and stuff. Protect the Faith gets a lot harder if you've got Islam, but you have a very cool little event down here, the Porch of Mecca, which, as I said, if you get all the countries in this area, make them Hindu, then you can do propagate religion, and more importantly, your Hindu provinces become immune to propagate religion trade. It's very useful. Let's see, what else could I go over? You can form Malaya here. You actually are at a pretty good spot to doing so. You've got one of the needed provinces, 10 of the needed owned provinces. The rest, obviously, you've got to conquer them, but by the time you get those 4 or 5, you'll be able to form Malaya already. You'll get a permanent claim on this whole area. That's quite nice. Here's how you could embrace Islam. You get the dominant religion. However, I will point out one other interesting thing. So, unfortunately, right now, there's no map mode to tell you where monuments are. So I will let you know Majaphit actually has 2 right here. Annoyingly, they're both 2 are in the same province, so it's a little hard to see what's going on. The first one here, Borobudur Temple, only works if you have Theravada Buddhism, which you're Hindu, so it doesn't work. But if you wanted to go Hindu, you could get 1 promoted cultures and cheaper conversion cost. However, the one below that, Pramban Temple, you can actually do as Hindu. Starts off insignificant, but for 1,000 golds, and then you can spend more manpower or gold to speed it up. You can get development cost, missionary strength maxed out. It gives you a 15 global development cost and missionary strength. This means if you can get it to this level, it is really easy to build up your lands down here to super high development. It will not only negate the penalty for tropical completely, it will give you cheaper. So this will be 10% cheaper, this grassland tropical province, barring the fact that you could also go economic ideas and get 20%. You could build a very tall Majaphit. And of course, be aware you can, of course, centralize the state and stuff, reduce the governing costs and stuff. It's quite interesting what you can get done as these guys. I've played about 150 years in one game, and I was easily able to subdue this area here and push my way up here. I formed Malaya. It wasn't hard. They're a very fun nation. Honestly, the start is tough, but it really isn't hard enough if you quickly invade here, get the subject, and then you just have to hold on with the faith, which if you decline the Muslim merchants, it's not a problem. Getting the stability is relatively easy. Legitimacy is slightly harder. You may have to deal with rebel armies. I didn't, because I did it so quickly in my playthroughs, but your army is 16,000 is pretty strong. Once you keep your subjects loyal, the only threat you come from your rulers dying and succession rebels, which, if you play properly, succession rebels are not really an issue. Be aware that you do want to keep a relatively strong navy. I can't count the times I was in wars and my entire country here got surrounded by galleys. The devastation and the war exhaustion is relatively painful. It's not particularly fun to deal with. The nice things, I'll just go over the rest of their ideas here. You also get vassal force limit contribution, which is nice to give you a larger force limit, especially if you make everything around you vassals, rather than, just outright conquering them. You get a missionary strength. You get trade efficiency, which is quite nice because you can build quite a trade empire here, especially with the new value of the cloves good over there. And then you get a free colonist, which is really nice because you've got a lot of land to colonize. Plus, you can just stick that in one of your provinces and grow the development even more. You get morale, you get heavy ship combat, you get naval tradition, you get advisor costs, and the ending is 15% cheaper diplomatic annexation cost, which stacks very nicely if you go influence ideas for 40% cheaper. And you can basically annex all your subjects at that point. Keep them alive for a while, just keep going into their lands and stealing development from them. You obviously want to try and keep them vaguely happy, but periodically you can go in and you can loot their lands for development. It's quite exciting. Just remember to refrain from looting their lands till you get the Renaissance, or you run across a problem which I was having, which is I have high development, but it is like 100 monarch points to improve, and I still have to spend like 500-600 to get the Renaissance. Once you do all that, Indonesia's kind of your oyster. You can conquer it at your leisure. The AI can't really keep up with you. You don't look like a huge nation, but you do start with about 100 or so development. Obviously a little bit more now that I've done development. But you're definitely the strongest nation in the area. You don't have a lot of military combat bonuses, but you have a lot of stability and governance abilities, which means if you get subjects, their force troops become very handy. Also, don't forget that you can complete your subjects' missions for them. Unfortunately, most of them are, at least at the start, some of them have like secure independence from Majaphit, which is slightly an issue for you. You could theoretically let these guys go and then reconquer them so they complete their missions, but I wouldn't do that. But they have all these little have trade centers and they get trade booms. You have the same ones basically, so don't bother to try and do it that way. Outside of it, the best nations to ally, Kutai, Brunei are good for the start. Later on, you probably want to get up here into Cambodia and Thailand area and ally those people because they're very useful. Be aware that the Ming are present in that area, and taking on the Ming requires you to have technological and numerical supremacy usually, but you also get all those nice claims on the Ming coast. You can pillage and privateer their whole coast and just kill their mandate of heaven. So don't be too afraid of the Ming, but make sure they're weakened and collapsing before you invade. Last thing, you start out with the mandala system, and you do start out, interestingly enough, with a level 2 tier. You don't start out with this, but you get the tier 2 reform relatively quickly during your disaster because you won't really be expanding. It's not really worth expanding while having a 15% penalty. I recommend you probably go for the manpower. That's one thing I found lacking as this country is they don't have the largest soldier pool. They just don't have super high development. And a lot of their provinces are like this, tax, but low manpower. And that's reasonably consistent throughout the region. Manpower is lower than I expected it to be. So use subjects, get vassals, use them to conquer. And have a navy. Please have a strong navy. It would have saved me a lot of grief. Do remember that if you control both sides of crossings and stuff, you can cross. But some of the crossings, like here, are not present anymore like they used to be. So just be aware, it's a little bit hard to cross. Thankfully, you can now cross through here, which makes life easier. But you're going to need a good navy, good transport navy. So anyway, that's it for me. I could talk longer on this nation, but I think I've given you guys enough to go and have fun with it. So thank you guys all for watching. If you did like, please like, subscribe, all of that. I do have a Discord where I answer questions. And I'll see you guys all in another guide video. Feel free to recommend countries you want guides on below. And I'll see you all then. Bye for now.